Welcome to Success Authorities Conversation Street with Leadership Authority Peter Beaumont and with Business Culture Authority Ronn Lehmann and me, Linda Ruhland, Success Authorities founder.
You think I'm humorous at times?
No, I don't.
On him.
So good. I'll be looking forward to that. I will definitely go see Ron. Then Ron, I'm in. All right.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. All right. Fine.
And we're off.
And we are.
Okay.
Who wants to take the lead on this? Who wants to take the lead on this? Peter,
I will. I've got a because I roped Paul in, and I think it was one of the discussions I thought we ought to have. So, I'd take the lead. So I think, Paul, when we met, we touched on some of this, which was. And so that's one of the reasons you've got a huge background in supply chain. And so I'll tell you what, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background first and how relevant that is to supply chain. And then I'm going to toss you a couple of questions that have been on our minds as a group that will get us rolling, I think.
Okay. No, that sounds good. Thank you, Peter. Yes, I've been in food and beverage my entire 43 plus years in industry. Even going through college, the same thing. Working some part-time jobs in the food industry and service industry. Did some work in the airline catering business, Sky Chefs at the time, and then got introduced to the Nestle organization, specifically the Stouffer Foods division. And to me, what a great place to cut my teeth to get, to start a food and beverage with that excellent company. At the time, they had restaurants and hotels. I'm dating myself a little bit. They don't anymore. They've sold off those divisions, but then transitioned into the Stouffer Foods division and enjoyed 17 years there. At the time, fortunate to jump on the wagon as Lean Cuisine was still at the time when I joined had a project code name at the time. That's how this was going to be new. We're going to control the calories. We're going to control MSG and then additives. There really wasn't anyone in the space, if you recall, at the time. We had to move into these production facilities and move quickly, and hence with the young family and things, we moved into Canada for a period of time in Ontario. Got that market going, and that was the way for us to export those products, get into the UK market. Again, dating myself, this concept of a club wholesale, Costco and Sam's, we're going, what are these? Is this a flash in the pan idea? What is this going to be? They want different configurations, shipping configurations, packaging, etc. Well, okay. All of a sudden, this thing, as you all know, it really caught on, and we decided rather than retrofit the plants, we built a plant in Springville, Utah. I lived out there for 8 years. That was a ground up process, and the whole thing, and getting acclimated with a new area, and obviously extending our distribution network then to the West Coast. After that consumed the 17 years getting that product on board, I spent a little time in the baking industry. You would know the products as Edwards, the dessert, Edwards Desserts, now part of Schwann's, and also the Mrs. Smith's group. At the time, they were out of, it was the Flowers Industry Group out of Tucker, Georgia. So we were living in Atlanta, moved to Atlanta for a period of time with the family again. And a lot of these were small organizations that were the turnarounds, to go in, see if we could improve some processes and get them ready, get the systems and infrastructure in place, get them ready for sale. We would make the flip, and that's so that was the end of the baking thing. Did 2 of those, and there was an opportunity here in Chaska, Minnesota, and ended up having some discussions with Kim and John Puckett and their team there at Caribou Coffee, and I thought I'm going to slide all my chips into this corner and get on board with Caribou. So spent 19 years with them, went through all the, the transitions from downtown. We ended up moving into the international market, which again was a great experience, because we had zero. I mean, when I joined, we had about 135 stores here in the US. We didn't have any market density at the time, and we found a great opportunity then. As I left in 2018, we had 287 stores at the time internationally. And people don't know that. I mean, to this day, there'll be people traveling in Istanbul. Paul, I just saw 2 caribous. I said, well, there's 33 more there. So it was fun putting those in and getting the infrastructure set.
As you know, I worked for Coca-Cola on the McDonald's business and helped them move into 30 new countries, 20 of which I worked on personally with McDonald's. One of the issues we faced, and I was wondering whether it was the same with Caribou, is that if you move too far, if you push the supply chain out too far without doing it in a series, if that makes sense geographically, it's a bit like a war where the military, goes too far for the distribution of gas, fuel, and all the things that you need. Did you experience the same kind of issues, and if you didn't, how did you get around that?
Now, Peter, we were definitely, that was on our radar screen. Hence our we first made our establishment in the Middle East in Dubai. And to your point, before the tentacles would go out to the other areas, let's set this up first. Let's get even though our development group was out of Kuwait City, Dubai was, let's get the core and let's start leveraging, obviously the cargo containers and all the other soft costs associated with releasing containers, and, that in itself, going through, getting ourselves acclimated with customs and regulations there was a lot. You don't want to go out and do the shotgun approach, as you know.
So I think the first question I want to field you on Conversation Street as such is, a lot has been talked about how we had so much disruption during COVID, and we did. But I wanted to ask you: do you think some of those things would have manifested themselves anyway, or in other words, did COVID just make them extreme, or were they going to happen anyway?
Perfect. Good question, Peter. Yes and no. I think what COVID, the silver lining in the COVID situation, it basically accentuated some problems that were hidden there anyway. Mm-hmm. It just was and again, I'm not a purist on many things, and I always take a hybrid approach to, whether it be JIT or some of the demand forecasting. There's always and it's when we play in the extremes, I think, that I saw that it always makes this JIT. Notice you haven't heard that. When have you last heard that comment before after 2018? You haven't. Yeah. JIT, it's great. And I think there needs to be, you need to be conscious of that. But if your system is set up and it's so tight and you do not have the flexibility built in, but their system platforms, if they had no flexibility or scenario options within, these guys were caught. And of course, think about how that moves again through the spider web as it goes out to your tier 1 suppliers 2 and 3. It was quite a mess, and I think there's some learnings there. And as I counsel some of my clients and things like that, let's take more of a flexible approach in the middle somewhere and optimize, rather than, back in the day, it was always let's make sure that we maximize. The word was maximizing everything. Well, I think there's more of a optimization now. How can we optimize? You may not get everything, but how can we get the best service and product and pricing and keep the nice mix, get an algorithm that selects the great mix of all of that. So
Paul, that stimulates another question for me, because apart from scenario planning, and I agree with you, I've found that I'm doing much more of that with clients now. Plan B and plan C, even plan D sometimes. But are you finding that your clients, or just generally knowledge in the supply chain, people are putting more of a buffer stock in now? They're spending a bit more inventory than they used to, or not?
Peter, some are. And again, it goes back to Elliot Goldratt, right? In the theory of constraints, the bullwhip concept.
Yeah.
Very interesting that, some of us don't learn. It's okay. We're going to go ahead. We're going to recreate our problem again. I was just reading the logistics managers index last night, and transportation is down now. The capacity is down. Why? Because all of that 18 months ago was going at full steam, and now everybody's sitting on this inventory again. You've got the economic situation, right? That's consumers are, well, I'm not sure yet. There's a lot of folks worried about the holiday season. That seemed to catch some folks last year, and who knows? We'll see what happens.
I think what's happened is we've got a lot of companies. I've got a client who's got the situation where they're sitting on a lot more value than 1 million in stock. Fortunately, it's not perishable. It's in the furniture business, so they don't have a problem with it going off. But I don't think people have worked out how much they've got all this inventory because they were paying through the nose for containers if they were shipping in, or right. I mean, at one point, $35,000 a container. That's down to 3.5 now. Incredible swing.
Yes.
But I guess my point is, they've got all this inventory as a result of this stuff was either ordered or on the water, whichever, land or sea. And will they actually, when they run it down, to your point, will they make the same mistakes by not having enough buffer stock? Or are they going to go back to having stock as needed because they can save so much on inventory costs?
Well, and I think the answer, Peter, to that again, I think it's going to be a mixed bag. I think you're going to have some who are, depending on what the mindset, what is the vision, what's the mindset, who's the leadership on, as you get into in front of some of these clients. I'm answering it in a longer. You can find out a lot in your discovery interviews, can't you? I mean, you hear it all. It's like, okay, I see where this is coming. I see where this client is headed, and they're headed into the iceberg. It's like, okay, this is, and they're structured that way, and some of it's panic.
One thing that seems to be a common denominator is, and as we start to come out of the supply chain issue, we've still got the labor issue, and that was one of the key things that I think some people missed. I mean, the obvious one was that we can't get drivers, right? Well, I think that's still the case.
Yeah.
So I wondered if you talk to that a little bit, and how you see us navigating that particular labor problem, because I think it's key to the supply chain.
Well, it is, and I think, Peter, the easy answer is obviously technology, but again, that has its hidden downsides too as well, and it's going to be a while before you can AI to you're blue in the face, and yes, there's going to be it's going to come on stream here, but like anything else, there's going to have to be applications that they're going to have to be tested, tried.
I have to tell you that driverless trucks does frighten me somewhat, but still.
Yeah, Peter, almost as bad as me behind the wheel of one, right? I think I'd still rather have a driverless truck than me, but anyway, we'll go with that. But yeah, there is. And I think a lot of it is from a labor standpoint too. It depends, it's regionally, it depends on, the various industries that are impacted by this now, and they're, where they're regionally located. And I think you'll see a lot of union activity, and some of it's warranted. I mean, I'm not saying, it's just, it all depends. It depends on the management, what kind of program is out there. But if you look at, I'll stay in the QSR space for a minute. That's my wheelhouse. I can get dangerous if I venture out, but look at the QSR. I'll talk to my own company, Caribou. Look at how many of these this particular location, this Starbucks will close at 5 o'clock or whatever. Very difficult right now to, and it's hair salons all the way across the board. And I think it's, I think it's definitely having its impact. And, especially, I was not to take off on this a little bit, but it is related to those who are in the franchising business trying to sell a franchise. What if, Ron, you're being presented with a contract for, 3, I'll just say restaurants or quick serve restaurants or something like that. I'm wondering now, my questions are, what economic model, what are you trying to sell right now? And how can you retrieve some of that? What is the business model you could possibly be selling when, as of 3 years ago or so, your economic model was, hey, here's what you should expect from this particular site, right? What happens when you're closing down at 5 o'clock? What guarantees are there? So I am seeing a little bit of hesitancy in the franchising, especially in the QSR space. And I wonder how they're going to
do service restaurant, just to make sure we clarify that, right?
What's that? Yes, sorry.
Quick service restaurant.
Yeah, the QSR. Yep, that is correct. And you're going to see McDonald's, you mentioned that, Peter, earlier, McDonald's is already going to some automated processes behind the counter. A
lot. Yeah, they've got these.
They're the leaders.
Remote units pretty much in every store. All of the revamped stores now have them. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, and I mentioned McDonald's because I think they're the leader. Yeah, all others are coming across, but they're checking McDonald's first to see, okay, is that going to work? Okay, all right, let's try that application. And
I'm waiting for the driverless car to try and order through the mobile window of the automated person through that hatch.
Peter, yeah, I don't know. I think maybe I will take over driving then at that particular point. That would be something else. I don't know, but it's
so it's still going to be an issue for us.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And in fact, could even be more. It's definitely impacting the medical field too, as well. As you all probably know personally, as you go into your different clinics and locations, it's very, my own situation with my wife's condition. That's, you see it. Okay, all right, and thank goodness you do have some of the technology in the application there to keep your records, up to speed and your medications, right? But in the supply chain, that's going to continue to be, especially depending on the particular industry you're in. And it's going to be also, there's going to be based on what we just talked about 20 minutes ago, is those industries where they're having these rapid fluctuations in inventory, where they're sitting on a lot of it, and then they suck it down, and all of a sudden this demand is out there. You don't have the shifts or the capacity then to fill that up right away. You don't. And if you're on the manufacturing side, you're hesitant you don't want to go out and make that commitment and, okay, well, we'll just utilize a part-time force. Well, your labor force now, they have choices, don't they? Well, I don't know if that's necessarily what I want to do. I don't necessarily know if I want to get into a part, especially under a factory environment. So it's, there's a lot of variables out there swirling in this good topic to bring up. And I know I didn't answer them, but
no, I think don't expect. No, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, because I don't think there's any answer to some of these questions, to be honest, Paul. I think that's why we call it Conversation Street. It's just what is going on out there, and what are some of the things that we need to be looking at and stimulating people to be thinking about it, rather than just taking it at face value and waiting for us to hit the iceberg, so to speak.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Conversation Street. For more information or to submit a question, email Success Authorities at inquire@successauthorities.com.